So one thing that I want to emphasize is this issue of agenda setting that is so important. And in our case, and all the hubs I know are doing that, we're asking countries, what are your needs? What are your priorities? And I think that's quite unique. We're not coming with a pre-established agenda. And the second thing maybe that I want to highlight in terms of the South-South cooperation and this is that not only the agenda setting, but the generation of knowledge itself is done by, of course, not exclusively. It doesn't have to be one against the other. It has to be in collaboration between researchers in the South and in the North. And this is very important because it allows to identify, for example, invisible populations that are very different in each continent, and also allows to identify solutions that might be very innovative, actually, because in poor contexts, I think there's a need for innovation that maybe doesn't occur in other parts of the world where there's more wealth and therefore more capacity to solve problems in other ways. So our countries have been pressured, if you want, because of circumstances, to be very innovative sometimes in how to tackle challenges. So I think that's the other thing which is very important, is how can we capitalize the knowledge in terms of solutions coming from the South.
I'd like to pick up on what we were discussing about the innovations. And sometimes what happens at KIX also allows for us to, sometimes organizations who are seated in the global north, to know of what we are calling innovations. But in a way, are things that are working very well for many years, sometimes for centuries, and they could now be scaled to benefit the same context in which they were working. So that's a part of KIX that we are trying to scale things that work. Either they are new, or they are already proven to work in a specific context for many years, and being guided always by our national teams. So I think it's the first part of our KIX work is always to listen. And all our hubs, we have wonderful national teams. There are people who are working in the ministries of education, with the civil society organizations, academia, development partners. So we are working with individuals who are already sitting at the system and working with the people who are make that system work, listening to their needs and trying to, as much as possible, make the links between the needs they have for knowledge production, knowledge exchange, and capacity strengthening that further amplify the efforts that the governments are doing, because the governments, at the end of the day, they are the ones who are carrying out the education reform agendas in their own countries.
Ok, pour rebondir sur les questions d'innovation qui sont au cœur justement du processus et les questions de recherche, bien entendu, au niveau de KIX Afrique 21, nous avons fait un important travail d'identification des innovations au niveau national. Et encore une fois, la crise sanitaire, en tout cas le contexte de crise sanitaire, nous a permis de nous réinventer et d'adopter une approche particulière et une approche itérative aussi avec les pays et de voir comment, dans ce contexte de crise sanitaire, comment on pouvait continuer à travailler avec les pays. Eh bien, il se trouvait qu'au niveau national, les pays pouvaient se réunir. C'est vrai que ça pouvait pas se faire au niveau régional, mais au niveau national, il y avait cette possibilité. Donc, nous avons organisé avec les pays des dialogues politiques en interne, et qui consistait donc à mettre ensemble toutes les parties prenantes de l'éducation, encore une fois, en présentiel, que ce soit les partenaires techniques et financiers, la société civile, donc les ministères de l'éducation, en tout cas tous les acteurs qui travaillent dans le secteur de l'éducation pour identifier donc ces innovations qui est passé d'abord par une première étape qui consistait à faire un appel à communication pour identifier ces innovations au niveau national, ces innovations qui ont été remontées, qui ont été sélectionnées de manière rigoureuse avec toutes ces parties prenantes, avec des grilles de notation sur la durabilité, la manière de mettre à l'échelle cette innovation, mais aussi l'inclusivité de l'innovation et tout un tas de critères qui avaient été définis pour voir si l'innovation a été vraiment porteuses de changements qualitatifs dans l'éducation. Et ce travail a été fait dans un certain nombre de pays et avec un consensus, bien entendu, sur ces innovations. Et ces innovations, bien sûr, sont alignées sur les priorités nationales de ces pays. Et ce qui est intéressant encore plus, c'est que la plupart de nos pays sont dans ce processus de pacte de partenariat avec le PME. Et donc, naturellement, ce travail a nourri la réflexion pour l'élaboration du pacte de partenariat au niveau des pays qui ont entamé le processus. Et ça, c'est formidable parce que on avait de la matière, on avait des données pour alimenter justement ce pacte de partenariat et aller vers la transformation du système éducatif dans son ensemble.
I would like to maybe highlight, before going into some examples, the approach that I think is quite unique that we have worked from KIX hubs and of course with the IDRC KIX team, which is, I think it's an ecosystem of innovation approach. And I think that's very important because when you talk about innovation in today's world, we usually are looking to what economists would say a Schumpeterian perspective. And at least from our perspective, sometimes that would be a dangerous perspective. What does that mean, a Schumpeterian perspective? Is thinking that innovation is about individuals coming up with a very interesting idea, usually very, what we call very flashy or fireworks of innovation. And the danger of that is, first of all, is that innovations are thought as individuals working in isolation. And second is that innovations are just flashy ideas that not necessarily have an impact. And I think the other approach, which is a systems approach, which is the one that our hubs are following, it has to do with understanding that innovation can occur in a systematic manner, in a continuous manner, at a national level or a regional level. And that means connecting different actors, that is knowledge producers, such as academics, with those who are in the field, with practitioners and policymakers, and making this engine of ideas and innovations work in a much more cohesive and coherent manner. And so I think that that's something we should probably highlight of this initiative, of this national or regional system, ecosystem of innovation, of looking at the interaction among these actors to create new knowledge and to disseminate it for the better use of policies. So within that framework, of course, we're trying to promote innovations. What examples can we show in terms of what we're doing? So first of all, we have done country reviews to know what is the priorities, but also the strength of countries in terms of the capacity to innovate. We have created maps of innovation. That means basically looking at what innovations actually work. So we have been mapping innovations in the region, but all over the world, also, and therefore beyond our region, that are related to the problems and therefore the solutions that we need in the region. And to map these innovations, what we have done is we have been looking and also filtering those innovations that have some kind of promising results and impact. So it's an ethical problem or an ethical issue to say this is an innovation, that is a new solution with impact, so that a country with limited budget can really, promote that innovation, knowing that it has promising results. Now, in terms of innovations that we have actually done in the region, I can, or exchange of, or in terms of innovations and South-South cooperation, maybe I can briefly point out, because of time, maybe two of different nature. One is, for example, the reform that we are supporting, and the innovation in terms of curriculum reform that we are supporting at the University of West Indies in the Caribbean. In that case, this university, which serves 10 plus countries in the region, almost monopolistically. That means basically it's the main provider of teacher training. we are bringing innovation, we're bringing evidence from around the world on what are the most effective practices, pedagogical practices, that really have an impact on learning outcomes. Which are these? For example, I'm talking about metacognition, I'm talking about collaborative learning, I'm talking about formative feedback, for example. And putting this into the curriculum of the initial training teachers. So we're reforming the curriculum of a associate degree of an education, but we are also creating a new degree, a bachelor in education for primary education teachers. In terms of impact, we expect to, in the next 10 years, to be able to change, if you want, or impact in terms of 22% of all teachers, the teacher stock in the Caribbean. That's one example.
Thank you, Javier. So maybe just to pick from where you've left, other than mapping the innovations that are there within the various hubs, we are seeing actually concrete cases of countries picking up from best lessons from other countries and implementing them. For example, in Africa 19, we had the Gambia, for instance, following capacity strengthening and presentations about the TAL project, which is not in the Gambia. They got interested because of the presentations, and they followed this up and went to Sao Tome and Principe, which is not even part of our hub. So we're also seeing cross-hub connections. And they did the benchmark visit there. And they saw, and the minister went, and some of the directors from the Ministry of Education went with them. And they liked what they're seeing. So as we speak, they're already mapping out a region where they want to pilot this program that is of interest to them. And to us, that's a really, really good thing, because we are seeing them taking it further than just sharing knowledge. We are seeing them going out of their way to seek for programs that are working elsewhere, and they feel that this can actually work in our country. And they actually even financed their own benchmarking visit. Yeah, so now we are looking at how can we now as a hub now come in and assist with that process.
Ça, c'est très intéressant. Yvonne, effectivement, quand tu as abordé justement l'exemple de la Gambie et puis Sao Tomé et Principe, c'est ce que nous recherchons évidemment. Et parce que, comme tu le sais, nous l'avons dit et redit, KIX Africa 19 et KIX Africa 21, c'est deux hubs sœurs, c'est deux hubs qui sont dans la région africaine. C'est vrai que il y a une partie qui est anglophone et une autre partie qui est francophone et même lusophone et qui ont les mêmes défis en fait, qui ont les mêmes problématiques et donc qui essayent aussi d'apprendre les uns les autres. Et c'est ce que nous avons essayé de faire dans le symposium que nous avons organisé l'année dernière à Addis Abeba, où nous avons mis ensemble les chercheurs de la zone francophone, la zone anglophone, la zone lusophone et les ministères de l'éducation pour qu'ils puissent interagir et comprendre l'utilité aussi des données et la nécessité aussi de se baser sur les résultats de recherche pour nourrir les politiques éducatives. Ça, c'était très intéressant. Donc, il y a eu des perspectives, des collaborations par la suite, que ça soit entre pays, mais entre universitaires aussi, il y a eu des connexions. Et ça, c'est formidable. Sur un autre point, également, au niveau de Africa 21, nous sommes en train d'aller vers aussi ce qu'on appelle des clusters. Nous avons déjà une expérience à ce niveau-là. Nous avons mis ensemble les pays lusophones qui ont les mêmes pratiques, les mêmes cultures, et pour qu'ils puissent travailler sur leur feuille de route, que ce soit sur les questions de recherche, mais sur les questions prioritaires en éducation aussi. Et ça, c'était un défi aussi à relever. Et nous avons réussi à le faire avec ces pays lusophones. Ils ont une feuille de route commune aujourd'hui sur laquelle ils vont travailler. Et ça, c'est une approche que nous allons menée avec la zone Afrique de l'Ouest et la zone Afrique centrale également. Et au-delà de ça, bien entendu, nous avons aussi cet espace qui permet à tout un chacun, n'est-ce pas, de bénéficier des expériences des uns et des autres. Pour revenir rapidement aux innovations au sein des dialogues politiques, le Burkina Faso a alimenté donc le processus du pacte de partenariat avec tout cet important travail qu'ils ont eu à réaliser sur le terrain, sur la mobilisation des innovations. Ils ont documenté les innovations non seulement pour alimenter le pacte, mais aussi pour que ces innovations puissent être partagées, contextualisées dans les autres pays d'Afrique et même au-delà. Donc, quand je dis Afrique, je parle de l'Afrique francophone et aussi l'Afrique francophone et l'Afrique lusophone. Et ça, c'est intéressant. C'est pareil pour le Niger, c'est pareil pour le Sénégal également.
Yeah, regarding the other examples that we can also maybe talk about from the KIX initiative in Latin America and the Caribbean. I think something that I did not mention before was in relation to the need to promote a culture of innovation and to also be able to gather and promote innovations coming from the ground. Sometimes also when we talk about innovation, sometimes we also tend to get innovations that come internationally or that are being promoted by very large or institutions. So what we are promoting is what we call the Lab Ed. So it's a laboratory of education innovation in the region. We did a call for innovations for Central America and the Caribbean. And we are funding 4 innovations related mainly with teacher professional development and issues that have to do with learning recovery. The interesting thing that is this funding goes along with support, technical support for innovations. So what we provide is from the SUMA and OECS team, we provide support in terms of theory of change and how to improve the innovations that the teams initially propose. But most importantly, also, we have a mentoring program that is attached to this lab that is provided by the universities, the local universities. So it is a quite interesting engagement that we're achieving there between the hub, the universities, and the actual innovators themselves. And therefore, for a whole year, we are actually supporting, accompanying the innovators through the national universities in which these innovations are occurring. So that's another example of how we are supporting innovations on the ground.
This is all for this discussion. I am José Luís Canêlhas, looking forward to talking with you all again. And thanks to IDRC for organizing.